Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Let me turn on the slide. Oh, I need to share my screen. My bad. Okay. Yeah, so I am sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see that. Thanks a lot for coming. This is a hybrid presentation. And we got one guest in person, thankfully, and we got two online. Uh, what's gonna happen is I'm on the Zoom free plan, so my meeting is limited to 40 minutes, but I'll try to be pretty efficient. So my name's Nathan, and I'm doing the presentation on soundproofing in multifamily and single family homes. And my past experience is that I was born in the United States, but I grew up in South Korea until my early teens, and then I moved here. So the accent never went away, but I've lived here in the United States much longer, and I lived in all kinds of different housing in Korea and the United States, from condos that are 10 stories or taller, and single family homes. So sound was always an issue. So I'm gonna present to you what I found and some ways to remediate that across different types of homes. So this is a quick outline. Not gonna read everything, but basically I'm gonna explain to you about what the current building code requires, how to comply, my own experience, and what we can do to improve our situation. There's gotta be different Q&A as we go. And at the end, there's gonna be a more detailed in-person discussion only for privacy. And there are these detailed slides at the end of the presentation, which I'm not gonna present, but I'm gonna share the video and also the slides as well. So next. So one challenge, sound is it's a very common challenge for people living in different types of homes. You've got issues like creaking, footfall, voice, TV, sleep disruption, and reduced privacy. So the thing is, noise is mostly a solved problem if you have enough money to put into mitigating the issue. And Massachusetts building code has required minimal soundproofing since at least 1980. September 1980, the fourth edition of the state building code. I have a little screenshot below. So the problem is sound mitigation, it adds to the building cost, and also it makes ceilings and walls thicker because you got to add extra materials. And it's still unfortunately not very well understood by some builders and regulators. So people don't know how to build for it, and some people don't know how to test for it. Not everyone, but there is still a gap. So not gonna go through this in detail because it's really disturbing, but that's over noise, suicides and murders is sadly a global issue. So New York City, South Korea, United Kingdom, they all had these issues. And when you look into them, there's a lot of deep suffering, a lot of complicated interactions with people that led to these extreme situations. So noise it's not just a United States issue, it's a global issue when it comes to buildings, especially multifamilies, but single families as well. So why do we have building noises? Proximity, having houses next to each other and living more closely, it has its benefits. You have easier access to community amenities, and you're able to use resources more efficiently, but also now you are more exposed to noise from other people who are just living their lives. The problem is houses are just simply a large box in a way, and what happens if you put boxes next to each other on top of each other without any kind of mitigation? The natural thing is for it to transmit sound, and the building code requires you to mitigate, and there are known ways to mitigate. So the problem is if you are suffering from noise, even from basic activities like walking and talking, if those are disturbing you, waking you up at night or just prevent you from relaxing, that's more likely a problem with the construction rather than people's behavior, because there are ways to mitigate pretty normal behavior. So there are two main types of sounds to mitigate in buildings. One is called airborne. So those are sounds transmitted to the air, like talking, TV, playing musical instruments, and mowers if you're mowing outside the house that can come into your house, cars, of course, and plumbing and HVAC, which makes its noise. Actually, we're in this library right now, and you can hear the plumbing and other stuff because we have pipes right above us. And structure borne is when noise is transmitted physically through the structure itself. The most common thing is impact from footfalls when you're stomping on the floor. Then noise can get transmitted to people below you. And also when you're dropping or dragging objects that transmit sound mechanically, slamming doors, using power tools like hammers and drills, and plumbing and HVAC, they can be both airborne and structure borne because if the plumbing is mechanical attached to the building structure, it's gonna transmit both the vibration sound mechanically and also it's gonna transmit it to the air. Those can be very challenging. So the current Massachusetts building code, it's called 780 CMR or Code of Massachusetts Regulations. And these are actually based on what are called the I codes by the International Code Council. It's a private group that has a global influence actually. And most states accept their building codes as the state building code. And they have two types mainly. One is called the IBC, or International Building Code for all kinds of building types, commercial and residential. And IRC, or International Residential Code, is a small subset for one family, two family, duplexes, and townhouses up to 3 stories. So these are houses, townhouses are houses that are side by side, but they're not on top of each other. So these have, the IRC has less requirements and easier to implement than the IBC. I just have a little clipping of it, the actual code from it. There are actually sections dedicated to sound mitigation requirements. So let's see, did I miss something key? Sorry, give me 1 second. Oh, okay, so here it is. Sorry for jumping around. So sound control principles, these are some ideas people found out through trial and error in a lot of research. And I use the term soundproofing mainly in this presentation, but you will hear people use terms interchangeably like sound control, acoustic control, and so on. So sometimes some experts mean soundproofing to be recording studio level quality treatment. So it's truly, truly soundproof. We're talking about residential soundproofing, which isn't as rigorous, but it still needs to be good enough for a comfortable living. So the main goal for sound control or soundproofing is to cause sound transmission loss between units. So different attached living units, like 2 different apartments, for example. Some of these main principles, the 4 kind of main principles, and the 5th one, which I added, is an important concept that's a subset, but I'm putting it here to let you know, and emphasize how important it is. So first is adding mass. When you have a thicker wall or a thicker ceiling, more energy is needed to vibrate for the sound to transmit. And decouple units, this means causing some kind of physical separation between the units. You can put rubber underlayment like springs, and you can separate the studs to cause an actual air gap. It's some kind of way to soften the physical connection between 2 units. And the third one, absorb airborne sound with insulation. So insulation is not perfect. There's research that shows it stops being more effective up to after a certain thickness. So it's important, but adding a lot doesn't actually reduce the noise by a lot necessarily. So it basically absorbs a lot of the airborne sound that's being transmitted. And fourth one, this is a kind of a confusing concept still for me. It's damping or damp to change the vibration to heat. So some materials like rubber, they're actually special acoustic caulking that's really soft and gummy, made for sound of damping. And there's this kind of a controversial, expensive product called green glue that's people debate whether it's worth the cost, but it's very popular. So these things basically, when you are having especially mechanical vibration pass through the buildings and they strike these kind of damping compounds, some of the sound gets transmitted to heat, so it reduces the vibration. And last thing, This is maybe considered damping or decoupling, but cushioning provided by carpet. So, I mean, I think we all have experience, but when you step on a piece of carpet versus a piece of hard floor, it's a lot softer. The noise is not as loud. That's actually a very valuable and important principle when you're controlling sound. So the important concept about the building code, it doesn't say how to mitigate sound, but it says what minimal level of performance you want to exceed. So manufacturers of building supply materials, they provide free assembly plans that help implement these principles. So I'm not going to read this in detail, but basically there are these really well-known technical standards by the ASTM International Company, or I don't know if it's institute, and they're formerly American Society for Testing and Materials, but now they just go by ASTM International. The two main sort of standards are STC and IIC. That's really well known. If you actually go to Home Depot or other hardware store and look at flooring materials, some of them are going to have STC and IIC stamped on their box. So these are idealized lab testing standards. So you test inside the lab using model assemblies. It's very common in construction because it's less expensive to test compared to going out to the field and actually testing. And so I'm gonna actually play some sounds. It's loud to give you a warning. I'm gonna reduce the volume a little bit. So if you're on the Zoom end, just be careful. This is actually showing how things get tested. So that test for this sports complex floor company, Connor Sports, they're showing how much noise reduction their product has. So you got the what do you call it, the tapping machine on the upper floor, and then you have microphone downstairs to test how much noise gets lost during the transmission. And this other one is a famous Canadian company called Acoustitech. This guy explains how things get tested or how the different performance levels are. This one is not as loud. So um, the general idea is both STC and IIC, 50 is considered a pretty good standard, and now recently it has become the minimum standard for most buildings. The building code requires most buildings to meet be below above IIC and STC 50, and 60 is considered really good performance. And 45 used to be sort of the basic minimum before, but it has become even more rigorous. So this person is showing you what the different performances are. I mean, it's anecdotal, but you'll hear it. But oh. There's a lot of noise in the building, so that kind of muffles it. But IIC 60 is very quiet. But part of the problem in this building, in the library, is that the a lot of ambient sounds muffling the sound. But basically, it kind of shows you an example. And this one below is sort of the anecdotal STC rating chart. It shows what the difference are between 45, 50, and 60 plus. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we are gonna demonstrate the actual model I made, and I'm gonna turn on my video for a second. Um, and are you guys okay so far? You can give a thumbs up, or it's fine if you don't want to. Okay, so I'm gonna actually, so I don't know if you can see this. So these are one of the many free assemblies provided by manufacturers. So I actually made a miniature model of this. I'm gonna show that on the video camera now. So it's from a company called Resolmount, and it's two identical models, except the one on the right side has a rubber mat for additional impact reduction. So the main principle of sound control, you have, I'm gonna show it with the camera. If you can see this, all right. So you got a double drywall for increased mass. So when the sound transmits between the floors, the sound gets, it has a harder time vibrating the structure. And really importantly, it has this decoupling. So I don't know if you can see this. These are actually sound clips, sound isolation clips, the pink. So rather than attaching the drywall directly to the joist, which is this one, you attach it to this metal furring strip for the head channel. And then you connect the head channel to the isolation strip. Or actually, you'd attach the sound clips first to the joist, and then you'd attach the head channel, and then you'd attach the drywall to the furring strip. So that's how it's able to decouple the sound. And the pink thing here, it's a blanket, but it's supposed to represent insulation. So that absorbs some additional sound. And the rubber flooring, it reduces impact and damps any vibration that passes through. And actually, let's see if I can demonstrate it. So I don't know if you can hear it well, but I'm gonna show you. So what you can notice is the STC for the assembly without the rubber is SCC 56 and IIC 50. And then the one with the rubber assembly on the right is STC 56 and IIC 55. So the STC stays the same, the IIC went up a lot. So sometimes adding just a little bit of mass doesn't have any dramatic impact on the rating to increase it. It's better, but it's not enough to raise the rating. But it did raise the impact reduction significantly. So I'm gonna see if I can actually demonstrate what things sound like. So this is a tuning fork. Gonna play that. I won't be able to hear that. I can show it this actually more in person during the Q&A, but basically the rubber is able to reduce the sound from the tuning fork. So, and I'm gonna turn off my video. So implementing in single family versus multifamily homes, the principles are the same, but actually the IRC, the International Residential Code, which is less strict than the IBC for single family homes, they also have less sound requirements. SDC and IRC requirement is 45 rather than 50 for homes that qualify under IRC. And the building code does not require SDC and IRC between rooms in a unit. It doesn't matter if it's multifamily or it's just single family home, doesn't require sound mitigation within a house. And also a standalone single family house doesn't require any of these sound mitigation requirements. That doesn't mean it's not helpful, because you still got noise and privacy issues within family members or household members. Sound can actually pass through between rooms and you can hear what the other person is saying. That's a privacy issue, whether you live together or not. So one kind of a concept related to all this is replacing the finished flooring, going from carpet to hardwood, for example. It doesn't require a building permit, but it can actually result in a building code violation accidentally because you're reducing the STC and IIC performance. If the carpet is an integral part of the soundproofing assembly, removing that and putting hardwood on actually might reduce it below code. That's actually sadly a pretty common problem. So this is a rough cost estimate. If I did some estimate using Home Depot materials, basically it's $3.79 square feet total if you're building new. and you multiply that by 3 to estimate labor. That's $11.37. And I got an actual quote from 2024 this year to retrofit a 156 square feet bedroom. Retrofitting is a lot more expensive. So if I was asking for a basic plan to remove some materials, take out the creaks and add insulation, it was $6,000, which is about $38.50. And the really high-end treatment with special drywall and those isolation clips I showed you, that's $10,000 for a 156 square bedroom or $64. So the lesson is, even though building new can be still expensive, it's a lot cheaper to do it right from the get-go than retrofitting. And retrofitting might not be possible because you might not have enough dimensions. So we're almost at the end. I think we're about 75% done. But before I head off to the next section and start wrapping up, do you have any questions?
My only question would be about like the open space. At our house, we have a floor and then like the rafters. We were thinking about like adding material to the underside of the floor between the rafters as a way to deaden sound, which would be adding mats. So maybe, like, I don't know how important that open space is.
You mean the gap?
The gap, like between, like here between your insulation and drywall.
Oh.
That space.
Oh,
Like it would stay open with the rafters. We can talk about it later. But I was
Yeah.
just curious about
the big thing about that is retrofitting by just adding a drywall can be ineffective because it's the decoupling that really helps.
that.
So besides adding more mass, you also want to decouple. So if you're just putting another layer of drywall,
Mhm.
it might help with some airborne sound more effectively than
Mhm.
impact sound, but the impact is gonna transmit straight through the
Right.
structure because you have the strong mechanical connections still.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm gonna go the next slide and start wrapping up. So this is my story briefly. Actually, I won't spend too much time on it. Basically, I was living in a condo that had neighbors above and below me. There was a lot of noise issues, and I tried different things. I put in a lot of insulation. Also, I added other rubber underlayment on my floor. And also, I even added a second subfloor to help my neighbor below. I mean, it kind of helped, but the problem was I could still hear her talk. She could hear me talk. The problem is the building had sort of poor construction where the noise took a shortcut. It's called flanking, where there were a lot of cavities between units that are not properly insulated or filled up. So the sound would just travel and quickly reach my floor all over the building. You could hear her talk in the living room, in the kitchen, for example. So, and I had the same issue with the no upstairs neighbor, and there were no impacts, no improvement. The insulation didn't do anything. And it actually got worse when new neighbors with a child moved in. They were up all night, they're running constantly. So now you hear a lot of loud stomping. Even a small child running can be extremely loud in a wooden floor that's not treated. And also, the neighbor was up all night because of health issues and some job stuff. So I couldn't sleep basically. Ended up moving out of there because I couldn't sleep. So these are sort of the solutions I envision. And the sad thing is society is still figuring out. We haven't gotten there. And we are also fixing past mistakes, like using lead paint. This is a famous book from 1923, Dutch Boys Lead Party. It's a book promoting the benefits of lead paint. You can download free digital copies all over different libraries throughout the country. So we got that issue, and we got noise issues. So a couple things I would suggest to improve where we are: clear and standardized regulations and technologies. So there's a lot of prefabricated homes and panelized homes coming online. So these are mostly factory built homes that's assembled on the site. So it allows for much more consistent quality and much more complicated features added in. It's easier to build it at a factory than going to the site and doing manual labor all day in the hot sun. And of course, you need good architecture. Somebody needs to design it right. And somebody needs to do good construction according to the good architecture to build it right. And of course, we need good bylaws. So soundproofing, even in this day and age, it's not a silver bullet. There are a lot of really high impact sounds like jumping, horseshoes, and oh, I got a 10-minute warning. That should be fine. Horseshoes, high heels, which can be very loud, playing loud music on your drums. So these need to be controlled through good bylaws and communication. And I think creating a common space can be very helpful so people can do more loud things in a common space and, kind of stay a little bit more peaceful and when they're home. And lastly, good culture. So noise is an externality, which means something, an impact you generate that's not felt by you, but by other people. And in many cases, people below you or next to you. So even though you don't see it as a source of pain, it might be causing other people pain. And I think there needs to be sort of a cultural awareness about that kind of profound and difficult ideas. And there are limits to what people can tolerate. Doesn't matter how tolerable you are, certain noises is gonna wake you up. So rather than trying to ignore those things exist, it's better to talk about things and figure out a solution together. So I think this is all the last slide. So thank you for working through the slides with me. So not ideal, but couple suggestions. You can get slippers and rugs, which are really effective. So carpet assemblies can achieve IIC 70, which is extremely high. And if you don't have a carpet, you can get some rugs and some soft slippers to reduce the impact sound to people below you. They have white noise machines and earplugs, not perfect, but they also help quiet things down. And if you got a really creaky building, it's easy to fix using screws and floor putty. The interesting thing about the STC and ISC is that it doesn't test for these types of structural issues. So you got a lot of buildings that might meet IIC and STC on paper, but they're still really noisy because they're creaking all the time. And even small holes, like even like a 1-inch hole or a quarter-inch hole can really destroy performance. So you want to find holes and old gaps and really fill them up. Better bylaws and agreements, like I explained earlier. And this is sort of an extreme option, but certain things are enforceable by the building department or health department. So if you're in a really extreme situation, you can check with them. Um, Not the most peaceful solution, but that might be an option. And when you're remodeling, be very careful. Like I explained to you before, replacing carpet with hard flooring, it doesn't require a building permit because it's considered finish, but it can cause the SCC or the ISC to go below code, which is now a building code violation. So you want to you want to be careful and get some proper planning and get some good contractors. So, and retroactive soundproofing is possible, like I showed you, but it's very expensive. And you want to make sure you get building permits and use really skilled licensed contractors. So what doesn't work? Some common myths here. Egg cartons. Egg cartons only work for reducing echoes, but they're not powerful enough to block transmission to buildings next to you. Adding more drywall with that decoupling from the frame. So even though it adds more mass, you still have that strong mechanical connection between two buildings. So that's gonna be problematic. And using really thin underlayment, that doesn't do much for impact. So, and that's the end of my presentation. I'm gonna do Q&A now. First, I guess, on both Zoom and the real world, and then go into the real world. And I'm gonna stop my share video. And I'm gonna let people unmute themselves. So KA was the only one on the Zoom world. Thank you for staying. Feel free to ask questions. You can just unmute.
Hi, I don't think I have any questions, but I thank you for doing this presentation. As a person who's also sensitive to noise, I really appreciate you sharing this information, and it certainly from both a landlord and former tenant perspective, I can see the value in this, all this information that you're sharing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, about the sound sensitivity, it's a very subjective thing, but the government building codes, they put the baseline. And the other thing about sound is I'm noticing a lot of people in different age groups, they have hearing loss from listening to loud music for a really long time. So my hearing is pretty good because not because I'm special, but because I don't like loud music. And so you being sensitive just might mean that you have healthy hearing. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. So gonna stop the recording and I will share with you the slide. You will be able to find me on Google. You'll be able to find on me on YouTube. Just type Google for this, type on you, search on the YouTube for the title of the slide or the presentation, and you should be able to find it, maybe in a week or so. Thank you very much.